It's
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate you remembering. I'm gonna have to figure out new strategies for how to remember to press the record button. Back to you.
carry me around in your on your Apple Wallet. So, okay, well, here we go. Going to start off this class a little bit differently, with a little invitation to sit and maybe get yourself ready for some Torah study. One of the ways that I've done that in the past that I've found really useful is to offer just sort of a guided meditation format, if you will. So let's begin by kind of getting into a comfortable position and settle into your seat, or if you happen to be standing or walking around, you can move your body however feels good for you. Um, but for those of you sitting quietly, I'd invite you to attend to your breathing and just notice your breathing, not to change it at all from its baseline. Notice the air when you inhale coming into your lungs. Your muscles contract as an active process, and air comes in from this great pool of being. Imagine that, this great pool of being outside of you, and you are actively bringing it in, bringing in the oxygen that is going to nourish your body. Uh, and then let it out at your own pace. And when you let out the air, when you exhale, recognize that it's a relaxing, it's a release of muscle tension. And in that release, there is air now with the addition of some carbon dioxide, maybe a few other molecules that were not present previously, types of molecules. And you're releasing that back into this really great, what is a great infinite outside of you. And you might continue that attention, or I'd invite you to join me in focusing, thinking of what we had studied in our first class, and that is the class on biblical creation of the universe. I want to highlight that, in particular, in order, according to Kabbalistic understanding, for the Creator to have made room, the Creator, which Kabbalistically was referred to as the Ein Sof, that without limit, the Ein Sof had to withdraw in order to make room for the finite universe. And so that began the process of creation. This process of withdrawal left a potential space. And I like to think of it, that potential space, as a fertile womb, a fertile uterus, in which the creations were birthed. We are co-creators with with the Ein Sof, with God, and have the opportunity to participate ourselves in the making of our universes. Just like in all our manifestations that occur throughout our lives, in order to manifest with the greatest effectivity, letting our neshamas, our divine spirits, shine forth into the world the brightest, we perform, either intentionally or otherwise, a withdrawal, a tzimtzum, in which our animal souls, our egos, get out of the way to make room for true divine, the truest divine manifestation, to free us, according to one author, from the bondage of our own willful beliefs, into a more pluricentric, broader worldview, more closely incorporating the whole of creation. The potential space that we create is a perfect place upon which, if you'll pardon the mixing of anatomic parts here, to practice the words of Torah and the prayer of the Shema, which we'll be looking at later. Quote, V'hayu advarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al lavavecha, and these words which I command you today shall be upon your heart. And if we think of the words, the commandments, the Torah that we're studying falling upon some fertile space within us, perhaps a womb of sorts, we might imagine that fertile grounds for the words of Torah, the words implanting there and growing into something, some wisdom, some deeper knowing that it's my personal hope would serve us in the whole of creation. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will. And I'd invite you to open your eyes and join me in the classroom study. So, like the other two classes, I'll start with what has come before. And I highlight here just the kind of the big ticket items that are listed. First and foremost, again, one thing, if you take away one thing from this class, take away that unequivocally Torah states that the whole of creation, which I equate to the global ecosystem or the cosmic ecosystem, if that is your scope, is prioritized above all else. So all actions that we perform in an ideal situation hold this in mind, the goodness and the best interests of the whole of creation. Bullet point number 2, humans being co-creators, as I had mentioned. Number 3, the fact that we as co-creators have this sort of interesting internal reality that we pulled out of Torah. The wisdom that we pulled out of Torah that I'm speaking of is that our souls are half animal and half divine. So the animal, according to its physiologic wiring, according to how the animal has been nurtured, acts to promote its best interests and the interests of its species, or maybe its tribe, its family. The divine spirit, which is, according to traditional Jewish understanding, unique to humans, a discussion maybe for another day, acts to ensure the best for the whole of creation. So in this human in this, call it human condition, as it pertains to the real world, conflict can come up between the two halves, conflicts of interest. And those are the times and places and the ideology, the mechanism by which the world might become imbalanced. And we are going to think of that in a theological sense of imbalance through sin. And on the other hand, since this is a Torah and ecology class and related in some ways, is the ecological imbalance that we are living that today. So the world bears the brunt of this inner human tension between divine and animal halves. And this is the curse that was issued to the earth in the Garden of Eden after humans ate from the tree of knowledge. Imbalances have the potential to be repaired by an eco-spiritual mechanism called teshuvah. individual human egocentrism, which first manifested in the garden, we saw at the Tower of Babel, is multiplied when humans organize into groups, large groups. This egocentrism becomes anthropocentrism. Anthropocentric human constructs often oppose the holocentric attitude and action found in the first directive of putting the whole of creation first. And it's B'Shem Shamayim that I posit is a way that we can maintain a holocentric worldview and then act. And when we do keep that holocentric worldview and act according to it, that is B'Shem Shamayim. And it is in contrast to the lawlessness that has grown. And we talked about this idea of lawlessness. It was going to come back and bite us. I warned you. And it will come back this class. And so this is going to bring us into class 3 today. The main point of class 3. We can infer from the words of Torah that it is written for a people who are deeply attuned to social justice and the land, as specifically an antidote to, here's that word, lawless living, to maintain a civilization's eco-spiritual balance and harmony. This serves the whole of creation. This is what Torah is in, I posit. It is sustainable living, and it is truly Eitz Chaim Hi. It is truly a tree of life. Okay. So now for a dive into Torah, we're going to be talking about Torah. Now, we have a lot to cover. We finished around the Babel story in the second class. We are going to actually take a huge jump now to the revelation of Torah. We are skipping some really juicy, ecologically, some really great stories with great ecological value to them. Lots of opportunity to dive deep into Yetziat Mitzrayim, into slavery, social equity. There is all kinds of wonderful themes that are there that, for the purposes of time, we're going to have to brush over. But here I'm jumping right into where Torah becomes revealed to the Jewish people, to the world. And so part of the scene, and we're going to dive into the scene itself with a couple of different sources. In this one taken from Exodus, quote, Mount Sinai smoked, for God had come down, Yarad, upon it in fire. The smoke rose like the smoke of a kiln, Kivshan, and the whole coal of the mountain trembled. So I'm going to offer out a participation opportunity here for those of you who are comfortable, and then we might follow up with some questions up from the responses into the chat. I'll give you a minute. Type in the following: thinking ecologically. What stands out to you about this verse? So thinking ecologically, take a look at the verse. What stands out to you about it? So while other answers are forthcoming, Moshe, this was you. Looks like it reminded you of a volcano and an earthquake. So how does that ecologically? Tell me about your ecological sort of focus on that. What's the ecological thread there? You're muted, I think.
I mean, it's it's where you feel the power, right? There's a sense of deep power. If I've never been near an earthquake or been in a volcano, or so or near a volcano and in an earthquake, or however you might say it. But it just feels like very powerful forces that one could feel, and often, there are tremors that are often associated with volcanoes as well. But I'm not. I don't know exactly. I don't have more that much more to say, except it just kind of reminds me of those things that we experience.
Yeah, and these are natural experiences. Great, and I
Yeah.
and I can tell you firsthand that being in an earthquake and being next to a active volcano are awesome experiences. I'm not suggesting you go and do it necessarily, but they are awesome experiences. Daniel, if I may be so bold as to inquire, I'm reading your chat here. Um, yeah, so you're keen on fire. Um, Tell me more about the sort of your ecological connection, the connection you're making there.
I think of fire outside of civilization as something that destroys nature, but fire within, harnessed via civilization, builds. And so I think it's a really interesting, contrasting natural um, event that we have harnessed to create things, whereas naturally it would destroy. And that is kind of a defining feature of, that time was creating civilization to build things, whereas before we were hunters and gatherers, we were destroying nature, we were part of the destruction of nature, but here we're transitioning into a community that can add things.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, thanks for your share. Those are some
Mm.
great ideas. I hope you will not be offended if I offer some alternative uh, opinions on that. And it's so natural, by the way, yes, to think that fire within the context of civilization um, does build. And it does. You're absolutely right. The interesting things around this is that, and as you, is that here we have fire and smoke from the creator directly. What's interesting is that they say the smoke of a kiln. There is a reference to an object made by a person. Now, the interesting thing about the word kivshan, this word appears, and I did highlight it in our first class, that the blessing that God bestowed upon people when he first made them, Pruervu miluataretz, be fruitful and multiplied, vekivshuha, and conquer it or master it or control it. Kivshuha has the same root as kivshan. And if we think of kivshan and we think of something that burns and basically leaves
Mm.
ash within it, I would say we have here, I would invite you to make some of the deeper connections with the fact that this is referencing back our inner nature as wanting to control, as seeking to control. Hashem is putting it here from Hashem's own power. So that becomes an ecological symbol here. Another ecological symbol that I'm going to move over to is the word yarad, which also in that very same sentence
Yeah.
that I just mentioned back from Genesis appears, but it doesn't appear as coming down per se. It appears as to rule. Pruervu umilu et arts v'kiv shoha urdu v'digat hayam. Be fruitful and multiply and rule the animals, the world, the earth. Actually, it says the earth. And what's fascinating here is Hashem provides a model for how to rule. One that now in our minds we might say, oh, well, ruling can be beneficent, it can be maleficent, it can be bad. Excuse me. It's But here, Hashem provides us with the model of what, as co-creators, he wants for us and what he maybe expects, or maybe what we can expect from ourselves. When we rule the earth, Hashem gives us the Torah. He provides us this gift to combat the very lawlessness, which is the human natural half of what we are. It's half of, it's a manifestation, excuse me, it doesn't have to be, but it's a manifestation of the half animal in us, if you will. One final note about this verse is the word kol. Now, kol, you may say, appears all over the place in Torah. Well, why does it say the whole mountain? Why does it just say the mountain? Every word in Torah, they say, has value to, has some importance. Well, kol is the word vayar Elohim et kol asher asa vayhi tov ma'od, Genesis 1:31, which says, and God saw all that he created, and it was very good. It harkens back to the one thing that was very good. So you have here references to the Genesis creation, and in that moment of harmony and balance in that Genesis creation that we talked about, that preceded, or immediately preceding from Genesis 1:31, comes Shabbat and the shlemut, the completion of Shabbat. And wrapped up here, I think, is this return to a return towards shlemut from the lawlessness, and by the giving of the law of Torah.
So, if I can jump in for a second, when we first read the passage, my immediate instinct was, the Genesis narrative is for all creation. It's a universal narrative. And this, the narrative of the giving of the Torah is a particularistic experience specific for Bnei Israel, for this particular, for the particular people. The connections, I love the connections between the creation, the linguistic connections between this verse and creation, because it challenges that dichotomy. I don't know exactly what to make of that more than that, but I love, that sort of like that original sort of sense that, like, this is more particularistic, specific to the Jewish people, is undermined by some of these linguistic connections.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Moshe. And if I may just take 60 seconds to address that, sort of within this ecological understanding of Torah, sort of this underlying theme that we're looking at is how I offer this. We finished with Babel, where essentially humans spoke one language, and then they said, let's build this tower to essentially usurp heaven. So this is a lesson in Torah that in a large group, humans have a challenge with large group. There's peer pressure, there's diffusion of responsibility. There are all kinds of sociological phenomenon that occur in large groups. Torah, I think, in my opinion, Torah was saying that's part of the problem with a lot. That's why Torah would not be received by the whole all of people. What Hashem then did was he selected a group of people. A few chapters later in Torah, you have the appearance of Abraham, and this idea of Lechacha Mi'artzecha, etc. And so began the Jewish people, and Hashem chose those Jewish people as a subset, or Lagoyim, a light unto other nations. We received the Torah. In some ways, I view this, and I think it's probably a common thread. I can't quote you anything, but it's viewed as our responsibility to share Torah. And the power of an ecological Torah at this point in our world, how valuable is that? So, okay, I've selected another verse. This one is not of Torah, but it is referencing the Matan Torah, the giving of Torah at Sinai. In Shabbat 88 is Talmud. Reish Lakish said, the Holy One said to the creations, if Israel accepts the Torah, you will exist. If they do not, I will return you to the primordial state of chaos and disorder. This is a beautiful, I think, elaboration of the whole of Matan Torah at Sinai. Remember, in our sort of study together, we had this state of lawlessness that existed where the earth was dominated by human Hamas. The word is for lawlessness, and sorry, I'm forgetting the other one, corruption, at the time of Noah. And these were the expressed characteristics of people that led to the destruction of the earth at that time. It appears, according to Reish Lakish, I think, that he recognizes that this lawlessness has progressed on some level. There was a pru or vu, there was a continuing population growth of humans. There was Egypt, which had happened, and there was enslavement of people. There was this failed food system in Egypt. There was God taking the people out of Egypt. And here we have what I imagine as the world on the edge of a blade. Well, we also know from Midrash, quote, God is making worlds and destroying them. That this process of, Hashem creates worlds, destroys them. And here we have what seems to be a thread of narrative from creation to Noah, etc., up until Matan Torah that seems to indicate, oh, is that what's happening here? Maybe Reish Lakish is cueing in on this. And by the way, this does correspond to our current scientific understanding. We know there are billions of planets in our universe. There's probably a multiverse of universes, multiple universes. How many planets within them? We don't know. We'll never know, perhaps. Planets after planet, some of which most people agree have life. I, for one, believe there is more intelligent life in the universe. Be that as it may, these worlds are hit by asteroids all the time in the universe. They collide with each other. There is a sorry, I'm blanking on the astronomical terms right now. Giant stars explode and envelop planets. My point being, there's this apparent understanding that the world could end. And the giving of Torah addresses perhaps the largest threat at the time, at least at the time, maybe our time. So briefly, looking at Torah in general, I've listed here a few of its functions. It serves as an ontology and a basis for reality. A lot of that I covered in the first two classes and is covered in the first few chapters of Torah. It is a history in some ways, or a myth, if you will, of the Jewish people. It is a code of law and ethics, and it also offers laws, commandments, if you will, mitzvot, establishing a way of life, which includes ritual and practical instructions. Verses of prayer are taken from Torah. And so I'm going to be cueing on a few of those. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the laws. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the prayer that is drawn from Torah. We're going to start with a look at one of the mitzvot, or I'm sorry, at three different mitzvot. We're going to look at Shabbat as a whole. We're going to look at treatment of susceptible social groups, and we're going to look at its construction. I have kashrut here. It's more than that. We're going to look at how Torah constructs an ethical food system. Beginning with Shabbat. Shabbat, I will state, is a method, an eco-spiritual method to restore balance and harmony in our world. That's a very big statement. We covered some of the primordial basics of Shabbat in Genesis chapter 2. And that was sort of, and by the way, when I say Shabbat for now, we're talking about three basic things. We're talking about the seventh day. I think we all might be familiar with that, or many of us would be familiar with the seventh day. We work 6 days, we rest the seventh. That's the Sabbath, that's Shabbat. There's also a Sabbath of the land called Shemitah. And finally, Yom Kippur is referred to as Shabbat Shabbaton. We're going to focus on the first two. We'll look at the first two. So Shabbat being the seventh day, here are a couple of things. And by the way, I'm going to pause and apologize. I'm just remembering that the slides that were attached to the email Moshe sent out today were incomplete. I will get you the full set of slides. Those will be available to you at a later time. Back to our regularly scheduled program. It says in Torah, and it's in the Ten Commandments, which appear twice in Torah. Shamor, guard the Shabbat, the Sabbath, and guard and remember. Shamor v'zachor. So let's start with that first bullet point, and let's do a little participation session here. Why are we commanded to guard the Sabbath? Go ahead and type that into chat, and then we'll do a little session on that. And then as a follow-up question, guard from what? So why are we guarding it all? And then what are we guarding from? Supernova. Thank you, Yael. Sorry, I just saw the chat. Apologies. Correct, yeah. So what are we guarding it from? And why are we guarding it?
Shamor doesn't have an E on it.
Did I not have an E in my editor? Put it back up. Sorry, I jumped over to chat. I apologize, folks. I am jumping a little bit. I'm technologically not able to have Zoom up at the same time that I have my slides up. Let me put this back up for you. So, Moshe, can I rely on you to read those? Is that okay?
The chat. So Michael Katz wrote, Shamor also means to observe. And then Yael wrote, perhaps God / the Torah's authors presently predicted that a day that restores balance to human-earth relationships would be unpopular, incongruent with systems of power and accumulation. I love that. Andrew writes, guarding implies vigilance as opposed to more passive observance, guarding from backsliding and shortcutting. So, it's an extra level of guarding of protecting this sort of basic of this important institution that we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And guarding it from
Beautiful.
what? I think we're guarding it from from all the in a digital world, we're sort of guarding. I there's all the melachot, right? There's all the specific actions that ultimately the rabbis unpack, which are not like listed in the Torah per se, except for don't gather sticks, you know. So just there's something about just being very mindful, present, focusing on our human relationships, on not using resources. Um, and in today's world, I think guarding the analog versus the digital. That's how
About our
I.
responsibility,
Mm,
human beings'
mm.
responsibility.
Sorry, I did someone want to speak? Oh, sorry, I thought I might have heard someone. And again, apologies for my not having Zoom to readily address um, uh, anything like that. So yeah, and that's Yael, thank you. That was some beautiful thoughts. Those were some beautiful thoughts. Um, yeah, I would add this, that Shamor is something that we were. It was our first commandment. It was our first. When humans were put in the Garden of Eden, they were told la'avda u'leshomra, to guard and to keep. Shamor and Shomra have the same, are essentially the same idea. In the Garden of Eden, I like to think of Shomra, Avda and Shomra, as sort of the ecological niche of humans in that time. It was our job within the whole of the creations, and it was an ecological niche that was within the shlemut that existed at that time, the harmony and balance that existed at this time. To guard Shabbat has a little bit of the same flavor to me, that we
Mhm.
are reaching towards an eco-theological balance here as well with Shabbat. That's how I like to look at it. And Zachor, remembering, it's going back to that same scene in Eden when Adam and Eve forgot the main directive of serving the garden and serving the whole of creations and eating from the tree of knowledge, etc. They forgot. They forgot that part, and so it is in our natures as humans, in our lives. We all have experience of this. Nobody, unless you have a photographic memory, perhaps, uh, will remember everything. And so this is so important that we are directed to, not through a mitzvah, through a commandment, to through the dibrot, to remember.
I just one other comment I have is Shabbat also next create, right? And you're saying this, but I'm if I was my older thinking of uh revelation as being about the specific Jewish call versus the general sort of experience, more universal creation. Shabbat also connects those two experiences, because Shabbat is one of the commandments and is the culmination of creation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Beautiful. Shabbat completes the week, as it did in creation. The The next bullet point is the term Shabbat Vayinafash. That's the Hebrew. And it means to rest. And Vayinafash is a fascinating word. It has within it the word nefesh, which is a form of the soul. I have offered it as the animal soul within us. And here we have this idea of Shabbating, or resting, if you prefer, but I like to think of it as its own unique way, Shabbating. We're Shabbating, and by Shabbating, we become re-souled. We rest. We emotionally regulate. We're able to temper our emotions with that rest. And I want you to think about, we won't spend a lot of time on this right now, but imagine how might observing Shabbat be regulating for you? What are some of the ecological benefits to that you would intuit from your own emotional regulation? And feel free, by the way, to share them in the chat. I would love to. I would actually love to know. Oh, and I do have those here. Yeah, actually, let's take a minute. I'm going to drop the. Let's see. Let me give you a minute with the question back up, and then there we go. And then we can talk about some of these. So yeah, let's have you type into chat and answers to these questions. See what we get. And while you're doing that, the one other thing I might point out is, if you look at Torah from a sociological perspective, and you were to do a study of the majority of it, you would find, this is my experience, that it conforms to a specific paradigm of sociology. And I can't remember the name. I'm sorry, but basically, what this particular paradigm does is it begins on the small scale of human to human interactions, and then it builds a sociological model based on that, with the individual at the core. Torah, I argue, begins at the core. It talks about the creation of the human with two people, Adam and Eve, a very small group. And from there, we see Pru'Vu Milu, be fruitful and multiply. We see the world filled. And a lot of the directives, not all of them, but a lot of the directives of Torah are directed to the individual. And so this particular paradigm, which resonates very much with me, also is, that it's on one-to-one interaction. It's on the connection between people, and then how you build up from there, being the sociological perspective. So I'll pause with that. That was just a little interlude. Do we have any answers to talk about, Moshe?
There's some beautiful comments. Daniel wrote that we spoke about this on Climate Shabbat, that resting allows all other systems to flourish cyclically in our absence, in addition to the more obvious reduction in energy usage, keeping things in balance. So just there's something that we gain from allowing our body to rest. Michael wrote, resting on Shabbat means the cessation of creative processes for 25 hours. Daniel wrote again, having a day that is not oriented to consumption reorients our relationship with the natural world away from consumption and extraction and towards harmony. And Yael wrote, when I'm resold, I'm less useful to systems of power and exploitation, whether that manifests as not needing to make that impulse buy because I don't shop on Shabbat and thus don't participate in the chain of labor exploitation, or as renewing my appreciation of nature. Shabbos pulls me out of the moral ethical frameworks of the world.
Oh my gosh, such beautiful shares. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for that. Yeah, those are lovely. Yeah, were there others?
No, but I'm actually really wondering about your ideas about, the ecological benefits of emotional regulation, because that's a really interesting idea, and would love to hear you. Obviously, your thoughts on that.
Oh, thank you. In one way, Moshe, it goes back to that idea of tzimtzum that we were talking, and I'm speaking. So I'm speaking from a little bit of a mystical, esoteric standpoint. That by Shabbat gives me the opportunity to rest my ego, to rest. If I for me personally, when I can engage with Shabbat, my heart rate goes down, my blood pressure goes down. I live longer, hope God willing, I'm working to be a co-creator, to take care of myself, to take care of the world. That's what Tikkun Olam is, and that's what repair of our world is, and that's actually what the Musar classes that I was teaching, facilitating at one point, were about: taking care of ourselves to take care of the world. And that's how I see life. That emotional regulation, then, the withdrawal of my ego, leaves room for the divine spirit within me to I guess, from a concrete standpoint, let me try to concretize it. I'm not worrying about myself at that point. I have space to think about other people, other creations, when my emotional needs are met. And I imagine I believe, in my understanding, it's that way for a lot of people. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. So that was very brief. There are some wonderful books about Shabbat. One from Abraham Joshua Heschel that is really lovely. And even if you were to read the preface, the introduction of that book, I think you would find some really interesting ecological ideas. So I can recommend that. On to Shemitah, Sabbath of the land. So this idea of letting the land lie fallow. There's another part of Shemitah that is Sabbath of that is loans with the neighbors. A neighbor's loan is forgiven. Let me stop there. What do loan forgiveness and debt remission have in common?
Loan forgiveness. So,
I mean, this
can
is
you ask the
all
question again?
Yeah, this is all part of. So these two things are part of Shemitah: loan remission and land lying fallow.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't quite. What do the land lying fallow and loan remission have in common that they would be sort of lumped under the same thing? Why not just two separate laws? So I think I'm asking us here to kind of dig deep. It's a complicated question, but is there something that you notice that these two things, the land lying fallow and loan remission, have in common?
Well, we're sort of restoring things to how they're supposed to be, and so if you are, we let the land lie fallow, regenerate itself. And if you have loan remission, then you sort of let the social world sort of regain its natural state. Whereas in its natural state, there's an ideal where kind of there's equality and balance in the social world, just there like there is in the natural world.
Nice, nice. A re-leveling of the playing fields, as one of my teachers likes to say. Yeah. Now, if we could distill this down to call it a virtue, a per, so can you name it? Can you name a virtue that might include that might embody what loan remission and landline fallow uh, have in common?
I
What
think
is it? Yeah.
I think they both tie into the simple idea of rest,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm, mm,
and pulling back and just
mm.
letting things be.
Letting things be. I that's so that's kind of what I'm getting at. What does that sound? Can we go back to those of you? And I'm sorry. Uh, Maybe we can go back to a certain Hebrew word or idea within this class, or go back to a basic nature of people from class one. What does letting things be seem to be the opposite of?
Or do, or like, dominate, dominion.
So, kivshu, to control. Recall that kivshuha, one of the definitions, there are many definitions. There's a definition of control, of rape. Sorry, that's a definition of kivshu, a definite master. So, but I posited that control was something I wanted to keep up on, to let things go, to release them is the antidote to this idea, I would say, of needing to control all the time. Even eating from the tree of knowledge, as you recall, was this pursuit of a project of knowledge to control the universe rather than sit back and just trust in Hashem and let it be. Human nature is such, no, we have to survive. And it makes perfect sense that the animal, oh my gosh, has to um, sorry, that the animal in us has to survive. Okay, so we control is applying our intellect to that process, that need. Release is the opposite. Release is letting go of that. And here we have, in one small measure, not like in the Garden of Eden, where where we weren't in seeking control, we had everything covered. Here, we're releasing a little bit. Loan remission, land. We'll give up. It's not really ours. Is money really ours? It's an ethical question, a rhetorical one at this point. Is the land ours? No, the land belongs to Hashem, and it says in Exodus 19:5. So, yes, we have here the antidote to control. Us letting a little more divine light out in our actions of not controlling, of releasing.
Alan, could you say that releasing is the ultimate self-control?
So yeah,
I mean,
yeah, you're right. But it's the control of the nefesh. It's the control of the animal spirit. It's the taking
right,
the animal spirit, if you will, and performing that act of tzimtzum, that withdrawal of our egos, the
exactly.
withdrawal of our animal spirit, to allow more divine light to shine into the world. Yes. So let's see. I'm checking. We 8 o'clock, and we're good to go till 8:30. We have a 90-minute class, so we're doing great. If anyone, by the way, wants to get up and stretch, or please feel free to. I want to encourage that. I know how real world stuff. How that works. So let's see. Okay, I'll offer this. There's type into chat. In what ways do the Sabbaths restore balance and harmony? Forgive me. I feel like we talked about that a bunch. So I'm gonna jump. I'm gonna move on. Sorry for that. Moving on to our next topic, our next focus of laws. Okay, leaving Shabbat and now going to people who are sort of underserved in society, who tend to be underserved. There is a law in Torah, very interesting. You shall not oppress any widow or orphan. If you do, I will kill you, says God, and your wives will become widows and your children orphans. That's in Exodus. I want to point out that this is the most severely written commandment in Torah of all the mitzvot. Okay, there is no other mitzvah that says not only. I mean, there's mitzvahs that says that do this or you shall die, or do this or you'll be lost from the land. This is do this, and your wives and children will become what you have mistreated, and they will be disadvantaged. So it's not just about a person; it's about their loved ones. Now, protection of them, this idea of the orphan and widow, protecting them, appears in Torah a few times, sometimes associated with other vulnerable groups. So this idea that protecting the vulnerable is an important idea to maintaining a social system and harmony. And then there's this commentary. Rabbi Ishmael explains that there's no difference between a widow and orphan and any person who is oppressed. So a really broad scope to this idea of protection. And within ecology, I would say that we might have, and this is a stretch. I have read some different commentaries on this. Let's ask ourselves the question to ourselves: is the earth oppressed? Is it is it an entity that cannot defend itself when making decisions about it, when making laws about it? Just a question. Should it be put in some way into this Rabbi Ishmael, what Rabbi Ishmael explains? So is it oppressed? And if it is oppressed, maybe it should be included in this. I'm not making any statements on this. I just offer that as food for thought. Another potentially underrepresented group here within this idea of ecology and climate catastrophe, one that Torah does pay attention to, are the future generations. There are a number of cultures that speak of future generations and considering the impact of decisions upon them. Indigenous cultures in particular. But I offer that those of the future generations, and Torah spends, again, a lot of time, multiple times in Torah, it talks about Haaretz Asher, the land of Israel that God is taking the children of Israel to. L'rishta, as an inheritance. There is a lot of talk of future generations in Torah. They are not there. Hashem essentially is offering them the benefit of the land of milk and honey. He's taking those who are there in, through the desert, but he's doing it also for those, acting beneficently for those who are not there, for future generations. And maybe we want to consider them more closely as well. We do. People talk about it, but maybe we should be paying more attention to those underrepresented.
So Yael texted, that this reminds her of how the Colorado River Indian tribes have declared the river a living being, granting it rights of a legal person under tribal law.
Oh, I love it. I personally, yeah. Interesting. Gosh, yeah. Indigenous has come up here a couple times. I've noticed, and I think that's a beautiful share. Thank you. Yeah. Is there anyone who wants to comment on Yael's share? And so there's always opportunity to comment. And by the way, I will stay on for a little bit afterwards to answer questions and chat, that sort of thing. And so there's always the opportunity then also. Moving from the mitzvot and the dibrot into a piece of liturgy, the Shema. I find Shema to be so rich in ecological hints, and even not so much in hints. Sometimes it's there in our face. And so there were a few verses that I put up here on this slide, and I'd like to go through them a little bit together. So the Shema prayer, if you will, the whole Shema begins Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That is arguably the most recognizable tefillah or prayer of the Jewish people. After that announcement, a declaration for the Creator, and we're kind of jumping over that, but here's what comes next. And you shall love the Creator with kol, your heart, with kol, your soul, nafshecha, and with kol, with all your strength. So first, I want to ask the question, v'ahavta, and you shall love. We may have some love is a very beautiful, complicated term. If we were to put ourselves, here's a participation thing for the chat. If we were to put ourselves into the boots of an ancient Israelite who was reading this, what would love mean to them? So if they hear, again, the commandment, this ancient person, you right now being an ancient person, again, putting yourself in their shoes, and you shall love the Creator. What does love mean to you, that ancient Israelite? Moshe, go ahead, and if you would, be so kind to share things as they come out.
Yeah, so just, for me, my first thought was that it contrasts with fear. And the second thought that is that there's that loving the Creator is also loving the creation.
Mhm.
And then in the chat, Daniel wrote devotion, and Andrew also wrote devotion. Two devotions, 2 votes for devotion. And Kathy wrote, I think there might be more about protection.
Hmm. Hmm.
Would you write something?
Yeah.
You say
Yeah.
it.
Protection and shamor, guarding, guarding
Speak.
perhaps the creations and thereby serving the creator. And quite honestly, yeah, the word devotion was the one word that jumped out to me also to describe that love of the early ancient person.
I would add to the interpretation when you talk about nefesh at a time when there was not a lot of abstract thinking. Nefesh means with every breath inside of you. When
Mm,
you even when you breathe and take a breath, that's showing your devotion to the Creator.
mm. Yeah, yeah. And the neshama was based in breath, so that divine soul also that we talked about. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. So the second thing I'll draw your attention to is this repetition of the word kol. And I'm just going to point this out again. The kol of creation. Yes, it's everywhere in Torah, but in some places maybe it stands out more than others. In that when we incorporate this idea of attunement to the kol, the whole of creation, when we fully attune ourselves towards it with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our strength, it's a call. It's a call that not only means, yes, it's all your heart, do so completely, but it's also do so with the whole of creation in your heart, with the whole of creation in your soul, or at least the mindfulness of that whole of creation. What's more is the 3 repetitions of kol here in the Shema prayer. We recite the Shema prayer 2 times during the day, 2 times during every day, the weekdays, according to tradition. That's a total of 6 times in a day,
Mhm.
which is 6 times we repeat this word kol within the Shema. It's 6, and the kol is repeated 6 times within the story of creation between the end of creation and the end of Shabbos, the Shabbos within Genesis 2. So the second bullet point here is the one where like the ecological sort of hammer hits home for me. Just listen to this. Just read this. Attend to my laws, says God, and you will be satiated. You'll get enough. You'll have enough food. If you serve other gods, you'll be speedily lost from the good earth. There is an undeniable connection between ethical behavior and ecological consequence. This isn't the first time this happened in Torah. It happened in Noah, where the lawlessness, the Hamas, the lawlessness existed. Here we have those laws. We're given those laws. And if we behave ethically with those laws, and by the way, okay, someone is going to yell at me for saying this, but you know what? I'm not going to say it. No, but what I was going to get at is I'm referring to Torah as sustainable law. I already said that. It is a law of sustainability, a law of eco-spiritual harmony and balance maintaining. So I've already put that out there for you. I really read into that here. These are sustainable laws that we are given at Sinai, and not observing them has ecological, unsustainable consequence. I would challenge you or invite you, however you desire, open up a prayer book these next few days, read this stuff, try doing it a couple times a day, spend 30 seconds on it. And if your response was a fraction of what mine has been, I would think it would be of value. Finally, oh, by the one other thing I would say is that if we are to one other thing about the second bullet point that I like to think of is that writers of Torah, we can derive from this, were attuned to the land. They knew this stuff. They knew the connection between ethics and climate. I challenge you to ask me the question as to why. I would be happy to answer that question as how I arrive at that. My point being is this is not new knowledge, folks. This new knowledge of climate change has been around. It's been in front of us for thousands of years, but our philosophers, our rabbis have had other priorities, understandably so. Real life happens, but now real life is happening to our climate, and I think we need to pay more attention, like our ancestors did here. That was a little editorial. The last thing, bullet point here, don't stray after your hearts and eyes. So this is in another paragraph of the Shema lo tatahuru acharei lavavchem v'acharei nehechem. We forget, right? We were just talking about that. That's why we, with Shabbos, we zachor, we're commanded to zachor. It's because we forget, we stray. It's okay. It's human nature, okay? But recognize this is part, if you're going to remember something else from this class, the first was the whole of creation is the highest priority. The second is, guys, we stray. It's okay, but this is our nature. Let's accept it for what it is. Torah keys in on that. Okay. Sorry. A verse from Torah. Sometimes Torah reads as a self-help book. Sometimes it reads as a book of life affirmation, of goodness. Guys, Torah is on the whole optimistic, okay? Nowhere else, no other proof is needed than this quote. Choose life. Choose chayim on this day to endure on the ground. We forget, we wander off, our eyes wander, our hearts wander, but in the end, come back to the primary directive, which is life, okay? Our, again, reminiscent of our discussion of the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve desired, their animal instincts, their ego got involved. And our animal instincts, they were no different, okay? It's only been a few thousand years, okay? Evolution occurs over much longer periods of time. Our nature hasn't changed that much. Our animal instincts then draw us to ego, to the willful beliefs. We forget that we serve as a light to the nations, not as a people, by the ideas that we represent in essence, if we think about it. Okay? We carry this torch of ideas. Think of it this way: to choose life. And we do so on this day. So when we read this, you can read it today, you can read it tomorrow. It doesn't matter what day, it's on this day. It's every day that we are called upon, it seems here, to choose life. It's almost as if we are back standing in the garden and we got the two trees in front of us. Hashem says, don't choose the tree of knowledge. And by the time, once we chose the tree of knowledge, we couldn't go back. It was too late. The universe could not hold a growing number of multiplying humans that lived forever. or for at least a very long time. Not ecologically sustainable back in 57, 86, BC, whatever that was, 50 years ago. And it's not going to work today. Every day, I want to encourage you to think about every day this idea, choose life. Choose the tree of life. Imagine that tree of life and saying, I'm going for life. I'm going for the life of the whole of creations, the chaim of the whole of creations. And by the way, I want to just point out, there is no singular for life as a noun in Hebrew. It's plural. Chaim is plural. Think of chaim and think of the life of the whole and choose it. With the 10 minutes that we have left, the Torah talks about an eco-spiritual food system based in mindful eating. Here is a list of some of the different little individual mitzvot, or basically. Interesting, I want to point out in particular two things. Number one, Torah creates a system for civilization, for sustainable civilization. Okay? It is an immersive system. It doesn't want us forgetting. Torah says, you forget, I'm going to remind you. I'm going to remind you all the time. You got to remember what you're eating. Remember kashrut. Remember all. Okay. Yeah, it's a little arduous at times, but listen, is it better than the climate? Is it worth it? If we could repair the climate crisis by everyone practicing sustainable living, I'm not speaking specifically every law of Torah, I'm not saying that. But if we could repair the climate crisis by obeying a few laws, observing a few laws, would we? Heck yeah. Well, this was before a civilization. So a sustainable civilization. It's an immersive experience. And we all love immersive, okay? We love our 5K TV, 4K TVs, surround sound, immersive experiences. This was the technology that was available at the time is all. The other thing I'd point out is the fact that the Mishkan Korbanot were part of an eco-spiritual food system. They performed a purpose of teshuvah, of returning an individual and of an individual closer. Korban is from karov, meaning closer to Hashem. And at the same time, it fed the Levites. Okay, it fed the Kohanim and the Levites. They didn't own land. It was part of the food system. All the other tribes got land. So we had to somehow feed our priests, feed the Levites. So this was what we came up with. It was a food system. It worked. And the offerings were an important eco-spiritual part of it. I'll tell you who's got a great book on this is Aviva Zornberg. She does, if you ever have a chance, a beautiful job. Just such a beautiful description of the Korbanot in particular. Okay, we're not going to talk about Exodus, a failed human construct, but I'm going to offer some closing statements. Bear with me here, and let's just, I'm going to take a deep breath. You're welcome to join me. You're welcome to stretch. My friends, Torah is a tree of life to those who hold fast to it. We have engaged in an ecological study of Torah as we are living a climate crisis. I hope we can see now how Torah is an ancient book, and while ancient, applies so critically to today, directing humanity then and now away from our worst inclinations towards shalom and towards unity with the more than human world. In a brief survey, we've seen the creation of a precious universe, witnessed the proliferation of a species, half animal, half divine, to become the top predator, uncontested, on the planet Earth. We've studied the growing pains of this species as time and again fail to adequately achieve a balance between their two halves, animal and divine, until on the verge of yet another catastrophic climate event, they accept the sustainable wisdom of Torah at Mount Sinai, and that is averted for a time. After a little more walking, they arrive on the verge, at the very end of Torah, on the verge of a new relationship of living with the land. I hope you've found value. I hope you've found wisdom that you can take with you into your day, something to apply to your daily practice if you have one. I hope you've found resilience and enjoyment out of sitting together during these 3 classes. I've found it wonderful, and I thank you so much for taking your valuable time. Moshe, back to you, or back. I guess we can. Do you have a few things you want to say, Moshe, or should we open it up to some questions? How do you want to
I'll
go?
just I will close by just thanking you, Alan, so much for facilitating these sessions and for sharing some of your insight and wisdom with us. If you want to get in touch with Alan, you can. Here's his email. He would love to be in touch with you, and he loves to talk about this. The last things I would mention is, if you want to get in and learn more about Colorado Jewish Climate Action, please do get in touch with me. That's my email or our website. And finally, this is the giving season. If you're so inclined to support our work, we would welcome that. So do keep us in mind as you think about your year-end donations. So with that, we'll open it up, and we can hang out for a few, and just to close this out. One thing I would say is that, Alan, is what you were ending with this sort of commitment to life as being a key piece of choosing life, and the steep commitment to life reminded me of the last Pope Francis, who passed away recently. He wrote an encyclical, and that very much focused on the value of life, and not just human life but all creation. And the encyclical is all about how the Catholic Church and religious people in general should really engage in climate action. So it was reminding me of that, and sort of some of the values that we can connect with other faiths, even if we don't see exactly eye to eye on what the implications of that might be. But that's what it was. Specific thing reminded me of.
Yeah, yeah. I know there are a lot of other efforts going on. One of the other kind of great joys. I have studied Torah for most of my life, and some of that is within interfaith groups, and that was some of the most rewarding, to sit down with like those different views and kind of see how alike we are in understanding. Yeah.
And I posted a copy of the encyclical in the chat if
Cool.
anybody wants to check it out.
Beautiful. I'm clicking on it right away.
It's available in many different languages. So if you want to read it in I think Japanese, you could do that too.
Cool.
Any other final? I just open it up. Anybody else wants to share a final reflection before we call it an evening?
All right.
Thank you so much.
Well,
Have a good night,
thanks.
everybody.
Everybody be well. Everyone should be well. Take care. Bye-bye.